That work? Let me know if you can hear anything. Anything. I'm gonna keep talking so you guys can let me know if you can hear anything. No audio. Okay, I plugged the snowball back in. Let me see if that went off. All right. So it appears that my blue snowball mic is not working anymore. So we're just gonna have to go off of the built-in mic on the webcam. So I don't know I've had this thing for many years. Might be time to retire it. This doesn't sound as good, so I'll have to get another podcasting mic of some kind. But it does appear to be working out. So sorry about that, guys. I will restart what I said, which is we have plenty to talk about for sure. And for those of you who are worried, got the batteries back in my yeah, I am a dude. I am a boomer when it comes to technology. I'm worse than a boomer. I'm a straight up troglodyte. Um, that means cave dweller for you less educated. I got a new guy background here too, a little friendly Claymore. It says front towards friend. My backup. But yeah, lots to talk about. We'll get into it in just a second. Now that we've gotten through our audio issues, remember, get on the Patreon. Link is in description. At the first live stream of next month, I'm giving away an old timer honing steel from Schrade. I'm giving away a youth or woman sized ghillie suit, two-piece or multiple pieces. Got the head, the torso, and the legs. You could also chop it up and use it for camouflaging gear or equipment if you're too big for it. And I'm giving away a K-bar, IFB Trail Point 5351. Nice little action there. And as always, if you really want to survive the apocalypse, go to rulethewasteland.com or Amazon, buy the Rule of the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit, which is the only survival gear that I know of that has an 100% apocalypse guarantee. Whereas if you buy this and die in an apocalypse, you get 100% of your money back. Just can't beat that. Yeah, fellow strugglers, greetings. Got lots of people on here, 17 people. So it's World War III, I guess, right? We heard rumors that U.S. was going to attack Iran. We assumed they were correct, but didn't want them to be. And it appears that despite making fun of extensively, pretty much making fun of Obama for getting drawn into the quagmire of Iran and the Middle East, Trump has also decided to open these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war. And the first thing I have to say is two things I have to say going into this. The first is that don't take anything I say throughout this or any of my other things to infer that I am in any way pro Iran. I don't give a shit about Iran. It's a backwards country. And in my opinion, Israel's a backwards country harmful to the US as well. And I want us to avoid the entire region. And all the arguments about us having to support Israel, the state, because of either religious reasons or the stupid canards about it being the only democracy in the Middle East, and we have to, it doesn't make any sense. And it's certainly not worth the trillions of dollars and thousands of lives that we've already lost and will apparently continue to lose. So I am 100% just want to do what's in the best interest of America. And that certainly does not involve another Middle East entanglement. This was the, God damn it, man. This was the one thing that we wanted you to avoid. And we're back in it again. And a lot of people are thinking this is no big deal. It's just a one-off. And I think you have to be absolutely insane to think that this attack on Iran is just a one-off. It doesn't make any sense. Lots of what's going on, and I'll get into all the details of what I think don't make any sense. But I think what's really going to chap a lot of your guys' ass is that Canadian Prepper was right. A lot of you guys seem to have some beef with Nate, but he has been pretty much dead on with just his sole focus on the U.S. is going to get with Iran, the U.S. is going to do Iran, if Trump's going to get involved in Iran. Yeah, sure enough. I mean, not that I necessarily doubted that, but I thought we had a shot at avoiding it. And he was very adamant that we did not. Apparently, he was correct. And yeah, SBQR says Israel and Iran can fight their own war. America first has no fight in this. Yeah, exactly. And we can get into a lot of the other reasons why it's bad, but it just doesn't make sense either. Like I don't know how you could really think this is supposed to be a one-off attack. First of all, there's a lot of evidence. There's always going to be fog of war type stuff. You can't just take anything at face value what either side said. I don't know why people take, like, if you were to go to the Russians and their official news source, or the Iranians and their official news source, they'll laugh at you for just taking everything they say at face value. But then they turn around and run right to the Ukrainian and Israeli news sources and take everything they say at 100% face value, which is equally as nonsensical. But so you can't trust either side. What you can do is trust them to do what's in their own best interests. So you can say, if they're saying this, why are they saying this? What do they want us to think, etc. Yeah, I kind of agree with Harry. He says I don't like his clickbait, but other than that, he's good. And I've talked before about clickbait and how I don't really care about clickbait and like the titles. There's certain things you have to do to get your content to not just disappear. And as long as you're not outright lying and being dishonest, I don't mind a little bit of sensational framing if you are putting forth real data and truth and honesty in your actual content. I don't really care about video titles. It's all about what you're actually saying. But yeah, so there's a lot of evidence that this attack was way less dramatic than is being claimed. So at face value, $12 billion worth of stealth fighters flew over to Iran pretty much directly. They didn't go from bases in the region, or they didn't use the Nimitz or anything, as far as I know. They just did a long flight, refueled, and then went directly, and probably, of course, with some support aircraft and whatnot. But 6 or so of these B-2 stealth bombers bombed the 3 main nuclear facilities in Iran. And these are nuclear, like enrichment facilities, allegedly, not like nuclear power plants or anything. And I do agree with Isaac Harry here, too, who says we were already in World War III. I get off on tangents, but if you look back, like, people claim that World War I started with the, assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. So if this one guy got killed and you were like, we're in a world war, everyone would think you're crazy. But I guarantee you, if this does continue to expand into what could be considered a world war, which I certainly think it will, that when they're looking back, it'll probably, what they'll say is when Russia invaded Ukraine, but it might even be something before that. It might even be one of these other little conflicts that happened before that really kicked it off. But certainly we're in the throes of it now. Have expanded into other conflicts. We'll probably soon see this expand into China getting involved in one capacity or another. But anyway, so these attacks on Iranian facilities, I don't buy that even the MOP, like with the mass, it's like the Moab, but it's actually the penetrator version of it, because the Moab is massive ordnance airburst, and the MOP or the penetrators are sometimes called the FOABs, or the father of all bombs. Like, even those things are not really able to go as deep as these Iranian facilities supposedly are in granite from ground level. And then even still, they dig under, and the important parts are under like a mountain. So not only is it like 100 meters underground, then it also has like 100 or 200 meters of mountains, like a ridge on top of the important parts. So they might have been able to collapse the entrances and stuff. We don't know. But there's some video evidence even from over in Iran that shows that, in satellite imagery, that it's hard to even see. There wasn't even a lot of smoke, but who knows with all that. So we know they did do some sort of attack. They're claiming, Trump came out and claimed that these facilities were, or at least the main facility, Fordo, was completely destroyed. Then we're also hearing that they potentially warned the Iranians about it. And there could be all sorts of reasons for that. They don't want to kill a bunch of Iranian people necessarily if they were really planning on being a one and done. They just wanted to destroy this facility. But it also means that it gave them time to get anything out if they did have enriched uranium in there, which is what some other people are claiming. And also, even if they didn't overtly tell the Iranians, um, like, hey, we're going to bomb this right now. We all knew or assumed this was happening. Seymour Hersh made an article about it that ended up being correct. And he's the same guy who talked about the bombing of that natural gas pipeline. So stands to reason that the Iranians would have seen this coming as well and been able to get out any important people, like if they have any already enriched uranium or not. So first of all, we have what seems like I mean, in the long term, insignificant attack. It has to just be more along the lines of showing the Iranians that we're willing to get involved, maybe doing it just because I don't know, if Trump's trying to get Israel off his back and has been like, look, hey, we did it, leave us alone, that kind of thing. But it's not going to work because, like I've mentioned on Twitter and stuff, nothing that's going on between Israel and Iran right now is affected directly by the nuclear facilities being destroyed, even if they were destroyed. So even if they were completely destroyed, that doesn't affect the missile campaigns or these underground missile cities and the what's rumored up to be 20,000 missiles and drones that Iran could potentially bring to bear against Israel. And if you accept the news that's favorable to Iran, what's happening is they're using some of their cheaper or slower missiles now, or not slower, but the ones that they're soaking up the air defense in Israel. And from what I've heard, the intercept rate with the Iron Dome and other air defense has gone from like 90+%, 95% to in the 60s. So they're already a lot more is getting through. And if they're able to keep this up for a few more weeks, the Iranians, then they could potentially exhaust all of the Israelis' major air defense capabilities and then go in with all like the Shahed drones and all the other stuff that's, cheaper or maybe more precise and not so expensive as like hypersonic missiles and stuff and actually just be able to start wrecking stuff. And you really think that if that happens, I'm not saying that will happen, but it's certainly a potential outcome. You really think if that starts to happen, Israel isn't going to come back tugging on our pant leg and forcing us to do something, or if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, I guarantee you there's going to be some sort of attack or something like that against America. And Trump has already even come out and started to change his tune about regime change, like less than 24 hours after saying this is not a regime change operation. Let me see if I like this or bookmarked it rather. I don't actually like it, but he yeah, so this is what Trump has said at today, what's dated the 22nd at 5 o'clock. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Mega, make Iran great again. So, I mean, it's not a one-off. You'd have to be absolutely stupid to think that this is not the beginning of another entanglement unless something he totally comes to his senses. And it's only going to put us more in a precarious position with everything else, the economy, isolation, all that stuff. So it remains to be seen exactly what Iran will do about this, if they're going to try to attack us directly or if they're just going to continue. They're not going to stop trying to make nuclear weapons. And it's stupid to, if you look at this from like a detached perspective, not even as an American, not as an Iranian, not as a Israeli, the situation is kind of absurd. You have a bunch of countries in the world that have nuclear weapons, including one of the most insane in North Korea. The one who's most likely to just fly off the handle and do something stupid and unhinged would probably be North Korea. They have nuclear weapons and delivery capabilities. All the countries that do not have nuclear weapons get attacked and deposed. And so you have these actions to stop a country that's pretty sophisticated, has some technology that we don't even have yet with the hypersonic missiles and stuff, that, satellites. It's not a back, like a completely caveman country. I do think they're backwards, like culturally, but scientifically they're not. And so you have actions being taken to stop them from getting it by or for a country that basically illegally / secretly has nuclear weapons, which is Israel. They're not like, according to international treaties, they're not like technically allowed or supposed to or do have them. So they basically have them illegally or against the rules. And then these actions are being done for them by the only country that's ever actually used nukes on anybody in two civilian cities when we blew up Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and being like, "You, this one, you really can't get nukes." It's just kind of absurd from like a hypocritical perspective or hypocrisy perspective. You could make all sorts of arguments why you want to be while it's beneficial to a country to just stop everyone else from getting nukes, but it just really doesn't make a lot of sense, like logically. And I just don't buy, first of all, that Iran would get a nuke and just be like, yes, suicide, because it would be a suicide attack. If they nuked Israel, anything that was surviving in Israel and everything that the US had, Iran would cease to exist. It'd be like 100 nuclear missiles or more would just blanket Iran, and there would be 5 people might survive that are in those big, huge bunkers. So I think we're basically throughout history of America, we've shown that you have to get a nuclear weapon or else you get taken over and romped on and abused. And we're wondering why they're trying to get it. So they're exclusively trying to do regime change. I'm sure it probably all comes down to the oil, natural gas, and everything. Energy is prosperity, basically, in this world, in this economy. But it's very stupid. But the main focus should be on what does this mean for us, which I'll get into the prepping side of it. But let me first go through these questions. Now that our audio is working. Be long crude, yes, obviously. Now there's some interesting stuff I've seen that like crude can't just spike to infinity. A lot of people are saying like it would, if they close the Strait of Hormuz or they blow up the oil fields and all this, it would go to like 150, or I mean it would go to like $300 a barrel or something. I don't think so. Maybe in like a day or two. But there's certain things that there just isn't a market for oil at any price. Like we need oil. The United States does, all these other modern westernized countries do. But there's a lot of things that just wouldn't be done or wouldn't get used if oil goes to that price. So it can't be sustained at too insane valuations for too long. 150 probably, 300, no, not for very long. People would just stop driving. Stuff would stop being made out of plastics. They wouldn't be repaving any roads, all that sort of stuff. Plane tickets would triple in price or whatever. So everything would just get so expensive, no one would do or buy anything other than what you actually needed. And that would put some downward pressure on it. But that's a pretty rough spot to be in too. And that's more of the effects as preppers we should be looking at, is not, can this happen? What exactly is going to happen to the price of oil? Is what are the cause and effect things that come into play when oil increases in price? Any amount. And that's the type of stuff we should be looking at. But yeah, definitely long crude. High Desert Pioneer says, if you want to know how to get your content to disappear, hit me up. Yeah, he's definitely shadow banned too. I'm not anywhere near the top of the list of being promoted myself, but it's crazy how they never show me his stuff. What's up? Sheepdog Patriot and Bamps Moy. CLM says, I don't buy that they can shut down Hormuz. We have access in Strait for 30 years just for such an occasion. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Again, are we talking about like permanently? No, sure, they can't. But they can disrupt the flow there pretty easily. And especially if we get to where Iran has disrupted a bunch of the air defense capabilities in the region in Israel, then even like the Houthis can, with their cheap ass missiles, and Hamas can start just lobbing those like rockets made out of pipes back in and start causing a lot of problems. And it could still cause a ton of problems. Something like 30% of the oil goes through in the world that's used goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So if that gets disrupted for even a few days, like look at what happened to like the shipping when that ship got stuck sideways was that in the Suez Canal, wherever that was, that the container ship got like jammed in there. That caused shipping disruptions for all sorts of random industries and stuff. And that was only stuck there for a few days. And so if you get oil disruptions for even a short period of time, or even just risking goes way up to where insurance companies aren't going to insure these vessels when going through there. All sorts of stuff can get weird. But yeah, I don't think they can just permanently shut it down. And that brings up another point too, is that and we don't really know, like I said, there's potential that they even told Iran this was coming and had some kind of deal to let us do this and then do some modest thing in response. Who knows? But if we really can operate the B-2 bombers with total impunity against these near peer adversaries with modern air defense systems, that does potentially change things when dealing with like Russia and China and everything. If you can literally just bomb anyone and they can't do shit about it. I don't know if that's the case. And I don't know enough about air defense, but I would assume that if you have the ability to shoot another missile out of the sky, that you could have the ability to shoot a bomb, even if not the plane itself, potentially shoot down the bomb that they're dropping, which wouldn't even be coming in nearly as quickly as a missile in most cases. Might just be too soon. Like if you really can't see the plane, they're coming in at relatively low altitude, maybe it's just too fast to deal with. But that could be good for us, obviously, if we can really, if these things are that powerful. But I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen. It says Desolator Gaming says near peer my taint. We got robot dog paratrooper swarms. Not yet. I mean, eventually, but we are behind as far as I haven't seen anything to think that we aren't slightly behind in drone and like hypersonic. I'm definitely in the hypersonic missile tech. Now, that doesn't mean we can't make these things, but we certainly haven't made it part of our, strategic plan yet to where we're actually building out these things. Mostly because I think we don't need to. Like I said, if we really have these $12 billion buys you some good tech when it comes to a few stealth bombers. So if those are really impervious to modern air defense, which I'm not sure that they are, but completely, eventually they'll use stuff that tracks heat signatures and air pressure displacement or something weird and doesn't actually rely on radar. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm sure we're working pretty fast on the drone stuff, but the Ukrainians and the Russians are getting a lot more experience there. And I'm sure NATO's picking up on that as well. But productive capacity comes into play too. And I know a lot of people like to talk about GDP and just how good of like a powerhouse the United States has been. Yeah, we don't have the Rezhniks or the whatever the I forget what the Iranian ones are called. Oh yeah, and I called World War III for sure. Betty says you definitely called World War III a while ago. Absolutely. I mean, I knew it would continue to expand. I was hoping it wouldn't be due to avoidable actions directly from the U.S. and Trump. I thought that Iran and Israel would continue to go at it, that China would probably go after Iran, that Europe might do something to try and take on Russia, et cetera. And I was hoping that the U.S. could avoid getting directly involved. Appears that it's not the case. But yeah, the productive capacity of the U.S. is not what it used to be. And even though we can have all sorts of money and technology and GDP, if we don't have the ability to literally build things, and that's what's happening with in Europe too, the actual manufacturing capacity of countries like in NATO, Europe, and the US is not up to par with its, GDP. So you can look on paper and say we're way more wealthy than something like Russia or even China, but China's shipbuilding capacity, they're like outproducing ours by like 200x, and the Russia's outproducing like artillery shells and stuff by many multiples. So just because they're like poorer doesn't mean that they're at a major disadvantage in every single area. And what I think is much more important, or not more important, but potentially equally as important, is that I don't know that modern Westerners, America, UK, stuff like that, have the stomach for the type of attritional warfare that we're seeing in some place like Ukraine. Like we ended up leaving Afghanistan and basically and with our tail between our legs pretty much. And that we were not taking anywhere near the type of like rough fighting and attritional damages that Russia is taking in Ukraine and that Iran is going to have to put up with and everything. So people aren't just don't have any reason to put up with that. Now, it is true that we are very well shielded, the actual individuals of our country, the civilians, but if the U.S. troops get involved, and start taking those kind of crazy numbers, and we have videos of American soldiers being chased down with, drones and blown to pieces and stuff, and it's being plastered all over the internet. Like, are we really going to want to continue that when it's not something that directly benefits us? I hope not. Do you think the draft will happen again? I don't think so. I mean, what the good thing that I'm seeing from all this is there is a huge, it's almost causing a rift within like the Republican side of at least online, where you're getting real information. It's not popular. Like there's the neocons, of course, who and the Republican neocons who are just you know creaming their pants over all this. But most of, I would say, Trump supporters are not in favor of this and are letting that be known. And a draft would be wildly, wildly unpopular if it wasn't for a situation where we were being like actually invaded. Now, That could all change if some kind of crazy 9/11 type thing happens. Um, I hope it wouldn't because it would seem so transparent to me, but it could potentially if people felt like we were actually being attacked. But maybe they'll do some massive cyber attack or something. But the good news is that I think God wants us to survive the apocalypse, or at least me, because I went to the store today and Stag Chili was only 2.97 a can on sale. So we're gonna make it. That's the good news. That is the good news, is we're gonna make it. We got our batteries charged with our rechargeable batteries. Put the link in the description for that. Put the link in the description for this. Now, like I said, we'll get into the prepping element of this now because we can get on here and talk all day we want about what's going on in the world. And like I said, most of it's not going to affect us in a way because we're so far separated geographically and everything. But there will be effects. We have to figure out exactly what those are going to be and how they're going to affect us. And I think the biggest impact is that this is going to be expensive and cause continued economic disruptions. And anything that happens, obviously, with China and if the Strait of Hormuz, there could be a lot of costs going up because of that, production delays and supply chain issues, that sort of thing. So what should we do to prepare for this? Nothing too unique. Like we always talk about the commonality preparedness. You just want to have your basics covered. I think more the specific things that we should make sure we're squared away on with in regards to this conflict is gas and fuel. Probably will at least go up in cost significantly, excuse me, over the next few years or months. And so you want to try to be able to limit your driving and consumption and also have some stored away for if it gets really, really expensive or if it gets disrupted supply, which is probably the more significant thing. So I've showed you guys before the jerry cans you can use. The Scepter ones are the best. They're super hard to get in the US. You can get the Wavian metal fuel cans. I would not get the generic ones. I've had those literally split at the seams and you just waste all your fuel and everything. Obviously, as Gregory says, you got to have one of these because this has a survival apocalypse guarantee. So get that on Amazon, the World Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit. I would also, I've told you guys this a lot over the past few months. Let me get my, all right. I think they're running a sale right now, Mira, but you got to get your gas mask. And I'll put a link to some respirators that you can get on Amazon too that are a lot cheaper, but should be okay if you're just talking about fallout issues. But I think Mira's running the deal on that. The 3M 6M, which is a slightly different one than that. This is does they have like the square looking one? Oh, this is the 6M. Yeah, I like this one, the CM 6M because it has a full face shield. It's a little bit more difficult to get a good sight picture with your rifle because of the shape of this. It can bump into your optics sometimes. So if you're going for purely tactical reasons, the one with the flat screen might be a little better, but this has a super wide field of view, so better for just general purpose stuff or if you have to drive and things like that. And then you want to get your filters. I have an old NATO one here for demonstration purposes, but you want to get a new filter because even if you get I would rather, like I've mentioned before, unless you're talking about real chemical agents, I would rather get a cheaper mask and a good filter than vice versa. Because unless you have full mop gear, you're not going to survive, nerve gas or stuff like that anyway. So you really just need airtight seal, something that's going to force the air to go through the filter and protect your eyes and mouth. So lots of masks will do that. But these things are already on a delay, like several weeks most of the time for the filters and the masks, unless you can find them available on Amazon, which I'll put the link. And if anything happens, and I still have a prediction, I think some kind of nuclear event will happen within the next couple of years. They're just going to be gone. That 6 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks of waiting will turn into 6 months. Who's saying I blocked your comments? I'm not blocking these comments. I just haven't reading anything right now. But so I would pick that up. Get your gas mask and your potassium iodide and that sort of stuff because not that we're going to get nuked or anything here, but it's something that we should have. And because it's a possibility. And if it happens anywhere, that stuff's just going to disappear. And I think Mira is running a sale right now. You can get that like 350 thing for like $200. And then make sure you have your cash. One of the things that might happen, whether it's a legitimate Iranian attack or a false flag of any kind, would be a cyber attack. where the internet goes down, payment services go down, power goes, something like that. So you want to have cash on hand and the ability to just purchase things that you somehow don't have. It is all the basics. Like I said, the food, of course, medical supplies like antibiotics, like your Jace case and all that stuff. And then, of course, any additional wealth instead of storing it in just cash, because you need some cash. Because if the internet goes down, even if you have this beautiful, sexy bar of silver like that, if the grid goes down and you go out to your, local grocery store or something, and you want to buy within the first few hours or days of that, um, you're not going to be able to use gold and silver. You may never actually be able to use gold and silver in a direct transaction. I disagree with a lot of people who think that we're going to become some sort of physical gold and silver, system. That's just not going to happen. Um, and obviously, I agree with the Google account. Body armor, you should definitely already have it. They're always trying to make that sort of stuff illegal. At least some sort of plate carrier or something like that, or a simple. I'll put the Safe Life Defense link to get those backpack panels. I carry that all around too. Great for civil. And that's another thing too. These gas masks, great thing for any civil unrest scenario. People throwing around smoke canisters and tear gas and pepper spraying everybody. Great for that too. Gas, gas, gas. What is it, like this? We had to run around those things. Luckily, I wasn't chemical core, but we did have to run around in the gas masks and mob gear for every once in a while. The stag chili is where it's at, and I definitely recommend the Laredo flavor. There's something about it. All right, let's go with the comments again. A Google account says, "Here's a thing: Iran-made weapons are low-quality units. Depends on what you mean. They're getting through. A hypersonic missile is a hypersonic missile. Is it the lowest quality one out there? We don't even have them. Their missiles are getting through. Their drones are, and in case you guys haven't looked at a map lately, this isn't like next door. These drones and missiles are having to fly like 1,000 kilometers, and they have to go over multiple countries basically into Israel, and they're getting there and they're hitting targets in Tel Aviv. I think they're overplaying some of the damage. You hear both sides are, like I said, have their version of untruth. This later gaming here. Yeah, I realize you have two emergency survival tips channel, so that's okay. Bampsy says 28 years later. Haven't seen it yet. We'll probably check it out. J Crash, like I said, did Eric block my comments? That's weak. No, I don't block comments. I don't have time to go over there unless you were really, really spamming me. I don't block it. If you use certain terms or slurs or anything, whatever, if it comes across like spam, maybe a link, then YouTube will block it on their own. I have no control over that. I can't even remember the last time I blocked a comment on YouTube. I just don't care. Unless you're just really ruining the experience for everyone else. I could care less what you're saying on here. CLM says, Eric better get some Febreze for that stag bunker. I don't know. It's all natural. Polish M17 equivalent aren't bad for the masks. Yeah, as long as the rubber, sorry, doesn't degrade and get brittle. You just got to have a seal. Got to have an airtight seal. Or it's not going to work. It has to be able to force the air through the filter, obviously, or it will not be doing its major purpose. Bank runs will be crazy. Yes, and actually I've seen potentially bank runs already happening in Iran. Like they're saying people can't get their money out or stopping them from, and people are trying to do that. Certainly could happen anywhere. I just saw it. I would not keep money just other than that you needed access with any reasonable speed in bank accounts. I saw some video of in UK, the guy was trying to pull out like $2,500 to buy like a little electric bike or motorbike or scooter or something, and they wanted him to like prove it. His account, his money, and he's like, I'm buying a bike for my kid. And they're like, can you prove that that's what you're doing? Like, how the fuck am I supposed to prove that that's what I'm doing? Like, give me my money. I would never use a bank if they did try to pull that stuff on me. A Google account says, don't fall for the steel with no spall protection. It's not good. Yes, that's the gas. Yeah. Yeah. Steel with no spall protection would only be acceptable if you were for maybe like a shield, where you have it on front of you and the spalling wouldn't be. But for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, you can have rifle plates or armor that is just steel. Works really well, great for repeated hits, but the downside, and it's cheapest of pretty much all the rifle armor options, but it's very, very heavy, and the bullet fragments when it hits it and creates these little, you know, pieces of bullet called spalling, and they tend to shoot out in every direction from the plate, lodging in your neck or your legs or groin and limbs and things like that, and can cause all sorts of damage. So the good stuff has different types of coating on it that contains that. It's called anti-spall protection or anti-spall coating, and the fragments get stuck in that, and you're okay. So you would want to make sure you have that. And if you there now, if you have like a big shield or something, it would be less important because, like I said, it's out in front of you. But for any of the plates that you want to use, definitely make sure it has some anti-spall protection. Right, and people buy them because they're cheapest way. It's not still not cheap, but like the ceramic plates or let alone the polymer plates, that stuff's very expensive, a couple $100 per plate, multiple hundreds of dollars. Yeah, and SBQR brings up a point. I haven't seen people test that, where he says spalling shouldn't not be a huge problem if the steel plate is already within a plate carrier. I imagine that would contain it pretty well because it's not like the spalling is insane, like, grenade shrapnel or something. And I imagine it would do a little bit of protection. Um, but I still would opt for the coating just in case, because that's just a layer, what layer of canvas. I wouldn't want to count on that, especially if you're hoping it survives multiple strikes. But I mean, obviously, if I have an uncoated steel plate or nothing, I'm going to use that. I might try to, like I said, I would like to see someone test taking a steel plate and just welding like a bead around the edge to just kind of make a raised lip so that any of the spalling would just kind of shoot back out or wedge in that and not come directly into your chin or your arms. CLM says, I have AR 500 plates, completely impractical for anything other than a static post, incredibly heavy, and I am a 6'1", 250 pound, and it's an issue. Yeah, this is not something, and I've talked about this before, where it's always important to try and, you know, decide or articulate, visualize what the actual scenario is that you're envisioning here. And because you see all these, you know, everyone's fighting their last war, basically. Whatever you've experienced, that's what you are like, this is what's important. So these SF guys will come on there and be like, you're not going to do plate carrier because when you have to march 3 days through the woods, you're not going to even wear that thing. And I'm like, well, am I going to be marching 3 days in the woods? Because I have this plate carrier for if I, look out the blinds and there's four guys kind of break in to rob and rape me or whatever. So I might have this thing on in my house for a period of maximum an hour or two, maybe. I don't know. Even being besieged. And so in that scenario, every single one of those guys would put the plate carrier on, even if it was a heavy steel plates. But yeah, obviously the lighter stuff gives you a lot more options. There's situations where maybe you would have to bug out and you'd want to wear it just because you don't know what you're gonna envision. So lighter gear would be a lot better then. And if you're gonna go on some long distance recon, where you're not necessarily expecting to encounter the enemy, but you might, and you're talking about days of hiking, then yeah, maybe you just leave it behind completely. But just always decide what you're actually, and again, keep in mind what type of scenario is most likely to occur here. Some sort of, for the average prepper, the type of stuff that a Green Beret and a Navy SEAL have had to do, or a situation like I described where you're in your house and a couple armed people come up to it. So I think, but you're absolutely right. They're incredibly heavy, and even the ceramics. I've had to ruck and stuff with the body armor on. Even just the Kevlar without the plates gets heavy and you'll heat up really quick and get really sweaty. So I definitely recommend just doing some training with this. You know what you're dealing with and not get excited. And because frequently too, you'll run into situations where you'll go to do something and you just can't even move the way you're used to. Getting out of a car and stuff like that, everything gets different. And if you're not used to it, you don't want to be game time to be the first time that you've had to deal with this and not know how to fix it. Four-wheeler cores, add a car muffler to it so it's almost silent. Yeah, you could do that. Try to make some super silent. Now there's so many options with electric vehicles. I'm sure you can make these electric bikes and stuff. You could make a little electric four-wheeler that was basically silent and recharge it with solar, that sort of thing. Bamp says if you weld directly onto carbon steel, it may crack. Interesting. Yes, and Google accounts is correct, and buy the correct size. Right. If you buy one that is too big, is actually probably worse than too small because the way they fit, you can it'll make your coverage worse if it's too small. You'll have like big gaps. But if you get one that's too big, it won't like hinge at the right spot. You won't be able to sit down, or when you do sit down, it'll turtle you. That's a big problem because you'll go to sit down. A lot of people like these girls and stuff that would be in the army would get one that they didn't have right sizes, or a guy would feel too constricted and size up or whatever. And you sit down in the vehicle and it's just so then the body armor is like up here and oh, because it's pushing against your thighs and everything, and then you can't do anything. So everything you want to be the proper size, resistant, the helmets, body armor, everything. But yeah, hopefully we won't get in a situation where we'll need full on body armor. But it's just crazy to have that technology be out there that can literally make significant portions of the most important parts of your body bulletproof, and to not at least have that sitting around as an option. I think for home defense type stuff, a lot of those bulletproof shields people should look at more often too. SPQR says firing a rifle with a plate carrier on is very different from when it's just resting on your shoulder. Correct. Train how you intend to fight. Now, now gay bench rest shooting if you already no gay bench rest shooting if you already got the basics. Right. If you are comfortable and competent with firearms, going out there and just continuing to shoot at the indoor range or bench rest shooting at paper targets is going to get minimal benefit for you. I mean, obviously, it's better to do that a couple times a year than nothing, just to stay with your basic firearms handling skills, basic accuracy. But it's a different story when you have to run up. I remember one we had to do where we were just running and simply going on a I think it was a live fire. Because if it wasn't live fire, it was at least blanks. Because I remember specifically having to run through this course and jumping on this like knoll that was all sandy and just the fucking dust that would like explode, and I couldn't see anything. I was getting in your goggles and everything. So just weird random stuff, and then like going to kneel down. There's a reason why they started issuing those knee pads because people would just get constantly jacked up from having to drop to their knees or whatever in the gravel and metal and everything else. Gregory Thompson says pizza delivery people look at you a little odd when you answer the door with body armor on. They'd rather you probably have body armor on than not have anything on, which I'm sure has happened to them as well. But I like my door because the security door you can't see in. So when I open my actual door, it's like a metal mesh door, and I can see out and see them perfectly, and they can't see if there's even anyone standing there. It makes them all nervous because we get a lot of like I don't order a lot of pizza, but we do get a lot of stupid solicitors. A Google account says PDW, personal defense weapon PCCs or pistol caliber carbines, are great with armor rifles and take a bit more finesse. Are great with armor, sorry. Rifles take a bit more finesse. Yeah, anything that's smaller and easier to maneuver is going to be better for that reason. And I think for most, like I said, most situations that a prepper would be likely to face in a real world scenarios, you don't need a full length. If you're still just talking about 5.56, the differences between like a 14.5 inch barrel, or even like a 10 or 11 inch barrel and a 16 inch barrel, it's not going to matter. And having a small, easily maneuverable weapon will matter, I think, a lot more often. Getting in and out of a vehicle, having it slung while you're doing normal stuff, all that just flexibility, being able to move. I mean, if you're talking about pistol caliber, then for sure, you don't even have any. But even with the 5.56, getting a pistol, like I have a little Banshee, I think it's 11 inch. It's a pistol, but it's 5.56, um, nice and short. And like I said, I don't think the advantages of the longer rifles will come into play very often, but you still have that. Mac 11 clone is a good choice as a Google. Yeah, I personally, obviously 9mm is much cheaper. There's tons of it around. A lot of those you can even use Glock magazines, which gives you a bunch of cross platform compatibility and stuff, but I don't see any reason to go below a 5.56 for my main kind of battle rifle, just because it's significantly more powerful. That's pretty common too. And obviously the AR-15 platform and magazines are very plentiful as well. And it's like I said, significantly more. You can at least be getting through soft body armor and stuff like that. But there's certainly nothing wrong with the pistol caliber carbines. And if you want to really cut down on the weight and expense of shooting and that sort of thing, and up on the cross compatibility, because like I said, you could literally have your sidearm and your main weapon using the same ammo, same magazines, which could be a huge advantage depending on what you're envisioning. Semi-automatic 12 gauge is my main, says a Google account. That's one way to go. For me, just the ability to throw so many more rounds downrange per X amount of time and carry. Like how many rounds of 12 gauge can you really carry? I love the flexibility and stuff that a 12 gauge can give you, but to have that, you also have to carry a bunch of different kinds of ammo and be able to know where it is and switch between it and everything. So shotguns are great. I don't really have anything bad to say about them, but I personally I don't want it as my main weapon. The emergency survival tips is going to run and refill my 5 gallon gas can right after the stream. Yeah, I also have I typically keep I think 6 gas cans, just 30 gallons. But normally one of them is empty because I will cycle through it. And I would not let untreated gas personally, at least out here in the heat or anywhere like heat's bad for it, anywhere it's moisture bad for it. Personally, I wouldn't want to go more than 90 days. I've heard some people say 6 months is okay with untreated gas, and it might be, but I wouldn't want to go more than 90 days with untreated. And I don't really go more than a year with treated. So I treat it all, and I typically swap it out every 10 months or something like that. So usually there will be a an empty can sitting there just because I usually wait until there's 2 cans go filled up. So I'll have one that's like lying fallow, if you will. And then when the second can empty, then so I always have 25 gallons of fuel in the cans. And I usually have at least a half a tank in my vehicle, which right now is I named him Dark Gary. It's a great pickup. It only has a 20-gallon gas, well, not only, it's a 20-gallon gas tank, but not too good of gas mileage. Those Nissan Frontiers have curiously mediocre gas mileage, like 15, 16 miles to the gallon. But that's still pretty decent range with 20-gallon tank, and then you add an additional 25 gallons that I could bring to bear. And if I was really in a major situation where I needed to make that last, you could use some hypermiling techniques and get that up to 20% pretty easily. Lost Trail says no love for a crossbow in SHTF. They have some great. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a crossbow, but would I like if I just knew shit the fan had happened, zombie apocalypse, whatever, and I walk into my arms room and I have an AR-15 and a vest with 6 mags on it, 4 mags on it, whatever, or a crossbow, maybe I don't know how many bolts can you carry? 50 would be a lot. Takes multiple seconds to reload each round. Not even a choice in my mind. Would it be fantastic to have around for different scenarios? Sure. You need to take out a sentry silently or something, or more importantly for hunting and things like that. And like long term. But even that, like people talk about like, oh, when once the ammo's run out. I mean, if you're talking years, I have a lot of ammo. um, if you're talking years, like decade into some sort of massive cloud, first of all, I don't train for that sort of. I think those are unrealistic scenarios anyway. I don't really prepare or plan for like a major societal downfall. But even if you are doing that and you're planning for that, a crossbow is going to have deteriorated by then too. Will they even have its elasticity? Can you even store extra band? Will they last that long without new ones being produced? Maybe. Um, Yeah, and it's likely to kill someone in one bolt, maybe, but maybe not. And if you have, even if you kill it with one bolt every time, if you have 3 or 4 guys coming up on you in a group, if you got like the Bangkok Rules scenario from Escape from LA, with an AR-15, you can go, you could fire off 30 rounds in the time it would take someone to do 2 bolts from a crossbow. That's a pretty significant advantage. Not to mention, what's the range on a crossbow? 75 yards or something? Maybe, probably 50 or less if you really want to. be accurate, and even a pistol AR-15, 100 yards for sure. So I just don't. I think people focus too much on some of the advantages and not realize the key factors that would come into play. There's a reason why every freaking military in the world uses either an AR-15 or some kind of similar 5.56 or an AK-47 or some sort of similar 7.62. New weapons that they're making now, notwithstanding, but like to think in all the technology that we've seen over the past 50, 60, 70 years, look at how much um, small unit fighting has been dominated by these platforms, like absolutely dominated by the 5.56 and most AR platforms and AK-47 and stuff like that. So I don't see any reason to deviate from that. Get a crossbow, have it, but why would you make it your primary choice? You're never going to win an engagement against people who have a modern weapons. And that's the kind of the same way I feel just about shotguns and revolvers. When it comes down to it, the um, the speed and volume that you can bring to bear with modern semi-automatic weapons and standard capacity magazines of 30 rounds is just so powerful. Melee weapon of choice is a spear. The range and the actual like effectiveness that you can have even with they've even done like tests on this. Swords are hard to use well. If you're a really good swordsman, you'll be able to beat some guy with a spear. But they've actually done like studies where people who have never used melee weapons before can beat people who are fairly good with a sword just because of the advantages of the range and the intuitive nature of it. Whereas you have to have quite a bit of skill and strength too to like wield a sword properly, especially if it's a big one. It's not easy to be good with a sword, especially against other people with weapons. So spear is for sure the best choice there. Unless you're going to be like exclusively indoors or something, maybe it would be hard to. Maybe you'd want like a short spear then, 6 footer. But yeah, spear, easy choice. A Google account says old full power military bolt rifle still give good body armor a run for its money. Yeah, I mean soft body armor and well, it depends on what type of bolt rifle you're talking about. It could be 30-06 or something. CLM says spears dominate swords. There's a reason we use them for eons, for sure. One of the main reasons, though, obviously they work and they is that they're a lot cheaper and easier to make, especially back in the day. Think of the amount of metal that you need and craftsmanship that you need to make a sword versus a spearhead and a shaft of wood. So for mass outfitting an army, there's just no question. But they are insanely effective too, especially when you're talking like against people who are going to be on cavalry or horses, um, stuff like that. The spears are just way more powerful. Vamp says spear got 90% win against a sword of same level. Yeah, exactly. And even if the person is way better than you probably got a 50-50 shot of spear against sword. It's a huge. I mean, you're talking about someone who's like skilled with a sword and you're not even that good, and you can like level the playing field because it's a spear against a sword. I can actually use a sword, says Bamp Samoisi. That's great. I don't have any particular training or skill with a sword. And also skills are, like I said, swords are um, expensive, harder to make, easier to damage. You could even make a rudimentary spear pretty easily. It's hard to make a rudimentary sword of any kind. He says, that's why I hate The Walking Dead. Not one spear. My entire crew would be drowning in spears. Right. I mean, if you set up like what do they call a phalanx, the zombies aren't getting in. You all have like long pikes. Cold Steel Africa. The Cold Steel has a few great spearheads. Lost Trail says best bug out vehicle besides a car? Question mark. Electric scooter or bike? I think the bet. I mean, like I said, again, you have to define your scenario here. If I didn't know what scenario I was facing, the best bug out vehicle, I would have to go with like a dirt bike because now if I knew I'd be able to, I mean, unless you're talking about some insane, crazy off-road death rig. But roads get blocked so easily. And so bikes and electric bikes, bicycles obviously are probably next best. The problem with bicycles, bikes, and all that is you can't carry a lot of gear. Whereas if you have like my truck, it's four-wheel drive, probably pretty good as a bug out choice, but it's just too easy to make something impassable by vehicles in a lot of scenarios, even for a 4x4. And then you're just done. You're just on foot. Whereas motorcycles, if it's a little dirt bike, you can even basically carry the thing over things that it can't crawl over. But yeah, that's what I have is a four-wheel drive pickup truck and not a huge one. It's not it's a Frontier. A Google account says a leftover undesirable surplus bayonet blade makes a great spear. Yeah, any sort of large knife could be retrofitted into a spear. If you want to jump on the Patreon and win this K-bar, you could strap that to the end of a long thing and make a spear. But I have one of the cold steel, like giant spearheads, and that thing would be extremely formidable. If you ever had to, it'd be really hard to get past someone who has a spear unless you're extremely good at it. Mr. Landfill says, I had hours of training with a Kendo Shinai. Excellent. I don't have any non-firearm weapons training, like knives or spears or swords or anything like that. It's probably unlikely that I would ever get in a situation where I'm forced to use a spear or a sword and not have a gun or a knife or something on me. But oh, before I forget, for those of you guys who are watching, we got 64 watching now. I would appreciate if you could hit the like button. But I just saw a video from Urban Prepper, big prepping channel, almost as old as mine. I was looking at this the other day, and I'm one of the oldest prepping channels that is still active on YouTube. The only one I found so far, I think, who is technically older than me, we got a couple. We got Such and Nut and Fancy, if you want to count them as prepping, and Demcad. Those are older. Urban Prepper was in 2011. He started his first one that's still up. I was in 2009. 2009. 16 years in September, giving you guys free prepping content. But Urban Prepper, who is almost as old a channel as mine, big account, 300K subscribers or something. I just saw that he's doing some sort of prepper meetups, two of them one in July, one in August. The one in July is going to be here in Vegas, which I was like, hey, let's make it a double prepper meetup. So I will be there. I don't think Road Prepper's anywhere near. She's been around for a while, but I don't think. Let's check her out. Morgan from Road Preparedness. I think she's still a few years behind me. Even Canadian Prepper was 2014 is his oldest video, 5 years after me. Let's see what Morgan said. And JJ was 2011, so he's about the same as Urban Prepper. Still pretty old channel. Southern Prepper 1 even is a year behind me. And like I said, some of these people, if they may have had an older video that they took down, I don't know for sure, like Southern Prepper 1 or something, but I don't think so. So Morgan's oldest video that she has up there is 10 years ago. So pretty old, been around for an entire decade, but my oldest one is like 16 years. So, but anyway, sorry. Don't get me yeah, Nut Fancy I would just consider more of a gear channel. Same with Such, even though he does cover prepping, it's a gun and gear channel. So it's older than mine. Yeah, Reality Survival is obviously fantastic. His was 2011. So Canadian Prepper 2014. Southern Prepper 1 is the closest one that was an older of the big ones. And like I said, Such and Nut and Fancy do cover some prepping concepts, but I would just consider them gun and gear channels. And Demcad beat me out by a little bit. Sorry, Urban Prepper meetup in Vegas. He said either July 8th or 9th, Prepper meetup. I'll be there unless something crazy happens. I'll bring some Rule the Wasteland survival fishing kits to give away. So if you want to just hang out with me and him, I've never met him before. Seems like a great dude. So go to his latest video or whichever of the more recent ones that talks about it, and there's a sign-up sheet so that you will get an email when he I think 72 hours before the event, he's going to tell us exactly where it is, but he said it'll be somewhere on this trip. So if you're in Vegas or nearby, I may have more Vegas and nearby viewers than he does. I'm not sure. He has a much bigger channel, but I'm out here. So I'll be spreading the word. And that is, like I said, Urban Prepper, July 8th or 9th, Prepper Meetup in Las Vegas. And he's also doing a big one in Seattle in August, where he said, since that's closer to where he lives, he has a whole storage unit of extra gear that's collecting dust, and he's going to give a ton of it away. So if you're near his Seattle one, there's a great chance you would get a ton of free stuff. Some good prepping gears. All right. Any last minute questions about World War III before we close this out? Prepper Nurse has been around. That's another good one. I think he's still not quite as old though. Prepper Nurse 1. 13 years ago. Pretty old. Yeah, so his oldest one is September 2011. That seemed to be a good year for people getting into prepping. We got like basically JJ, Urban Prepper, Prepper Nurse 1. So pretty cool. Canadian Prepper promoted my fishing kit like 2 videos ago. That's awesome. Can you post a link to that one? I missed it. I've watched his videos. Must have been. Oh, he split his channel. So was it on the? That is. I'll have to thank him for that. The one where he was talking. He showed his bug out roll in the where it says build a bug out bag. Awesome. I'll have to send. Thank you. I did send him a batch. Well, he bought them for his store a batch while ago. I made him a bulk deal so he could sell them on Canadian preparedness. So hopefully they're selling decently on there. Send him another batch at some point. Can you put me in your chili, Will, if you succumb to the wastelands? No, this is already spoken for. All my preps, I have other people I need to keep alive. Get David the Good on. He already said yes. Yes, I will. I will give him a call. I'm actually trying to set up a separate interview channel, but I'll do both. And he's great. If you haven't seen David the Good, he was on my channel and interview way back when. I think I have a playlist of a couple of video interviews with him. And at that time, his channel was fairly small. And now he has like by being very consistent with his content and putting out a lot of great info that is all gardening related and stuff. He has gotten to like 300,000 subscribers and is doing great. And he has a ton of good books out there. So definitely always check out his stuff. And if you're any interest in food production, gardening, Last Trail or Lost Trails, it was his latest bug out bag video literally like 2 days ago. Yeah, with the bug out roll. Cool. Awesome. I haven't watched that one yet. I just saw it pop up. I will check it out and have to thank him for that. Yeah, SBQR says he credits me with giving him a big boost. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad if it did help out because my channel was slightly bigger than his at the time, but not huge. But if anything can help out, be fantastic. And then I squandered by not making videos all the time. Well, he kept at it, and it paid off for sure. Well, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you stay safe out there. And like I said, check out the links that I'll put. They're not going to be there yet because this is just ending, but I'll put links in the description to get your mirror gas mask, which should be on sale right now, depending on when you're watching this video. Remember to sign up Patreon if you get those things, if you want to win something cool. And stay safe, guys, and just keep your eyes open. Stay prepped with the basics, and I will talk to you guys soon.